I've been in the business of medicine for a very long time. I talked to one of my colleagues this morning, and we realized that we have known each other for almost 40 years. So I went to medical school a long, long time ago. I know I hide it well. However, it has been over 34 years that I've been in practice. So when I went to medical school, my idea of the health and knowledge that I was going to give to my patients was very different from what we're able to do today. And I've always had interest in fitness, and in going into medicine, my feeling was I could share this with my patients because everything is not about writing a prescription, but it's about, number one, knowledge, about education about this vessel, which we are all so blessed to have, and the ability to keep it as well as possible. So my sport in college was fencing, actually.
Wow.
And it was just very active, and I never wanted to, be the recipient of the swords. I moved around an awful lot, but it was something that I became aware that I wanted always to do something to keep myself as fit as possible. So I didn't really know what fit was, but it sounded good, and way back in the day, you wanted to be fit for a lot of different reasons. I wasn't married then, and I had to get to that point in school. So I always had a desire to know more about nurturing one's own vessel and what we needed to do for that. So I got busy, went to medical school actually in the 70s, and got even busier, and never really had the opportunity to learn the things that I wanted to share with my patients, so I had to take it upon myself. So I'm going to kind of go through a linear course here. So came to Atlanta in the 80s, and very similar to what Darren told us, I heard about direct marketing and never really listened, but I had people coming to me to try to share stories and never knew anything about it. And I guess it's okay to mention an old company that I first became aware with. It was called Herbalife. And so I said, this looks good, and I always made shakes, and this was something that I'd be able to do. I'll share with my colleagues. Well, I was kind of innocent. I was moonlighting. I was driving, 80 miles because we had to supplement our income when we were in training. We didn't get paid really. We got a couple of dollars, during the training. So we were driving South Georgia, North Georgia, overnight, coming back, trying to stay awake, drinking coffee and working all day long. Someone told me about Herbalife, and I said, wow, this is good. Let me just try this, and I liked the product. So I decided, no internet back then or telephones. I said, I'm going to take a little ad out in the Atlanta Constitution, Journal-Constitution, and I'm just going to tell everybody that I'm losing weight now and ask me how. And that was my little slogan. I rented a little room in a hotel right off of I-85 near the connector, and waited for the day, came in, and I had some shakes and some blenders and had everybody come in. 150 people showed up. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I started talking to them, everybody came up. I couldn't even talk to everybody because they weren't online, and people were calling me, and it was literally about a month and a half later, and this was running to the airport, Eastern Airlines, having things shipped, big boxes. I had to get people to help me to bring it. I had to make a decision because I was getting calls at midnight. I was getting calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the product people were knocking on my door. They were thinking, she's selling drugs, what's she gonna do in there, And so I had some people to help me, but I couldn't do it. So I said, am I gonna be a doctor, or am I gonna sell Herbalife? I gotta be a doctor. And I just stopped. I couldn't do both. And so I continued using products, continued gaining my knowledge, and fast forward, got married in the mid-'80s, and started hearing a little bit more. Had a colleague that I did some business ventures with, and he continued to tell me about these products and network marketing, and I never got the business side of it, but I love the products, and whenever I talked about them, because I always studied, that's my job, I study and I learn and I share information, okay? And when I did that, I had attention, and I had patients and colleagues that would want to join me in what I was doing because I did it. And I never tell anybody anything except what I'm doing. And so as a physician, we like evidence-based medicine. We like to have proof because number one, we're liable. We're sharing products or information that may affect people's lives, may cause safety issues, but we want it to be efficacious. However, with supplements, and I learned a lot about what we do. We start most of the time with pharmaceuticals, and so pharmaceuticals have to go through clinical trials, they have to have a couple of them, they have to have agreement with colleagues and safety and efficacy studies over years. It takes billions of dollars to bring a pharmaceutical to market. Very expensive. You have to have over 250 patients, up to 1,000. And I knew that what I was sharing, I wouldn't be able to have that. So I said, who could I best use to test these products? Well, me first, and then my family, you know? My family, because I wanted to make sure, and if it was safe enough for my family, then I felt that it was safe enough to share with my patients. And so you just start talking, and back in 2008 about, I actually met Rachel, and I became familiar at that time with a product called Mila. And we talk about poop, Tony, and we have to talk about poop because we don't like change. You know, and it's change that gets our attention. It really does. And as a physician, and I'm a rheumatologist, let me tell you that. And I'm a rheumatologist and I'm an immunologist. I have a practice here in Atlanta, been in practice over 34 years. I have a large clinical practice, as well as a large research practice. So I do research, I do clinical research, I test drugs. We have patients that come in and dedicate their time to let us know what we can prescribe to patients. So I met Rachel, learned about Mila, and that whole concept of cleansing is very, very important because we're a real stopped up society, I'll tell you. And one of the most important things, and back when I first went to practice, I had little elderly people bringing jars in, showing me what they were producing, and to ask me what the poop was about.
Tony has that same collection.
Does he have that?
We got pictures.
And really, nowadays, we know that what is inside is very, very important. And you're going to have to stop me because I can probably go on and on. So just, give me the tea. So when I was introduced to Mila, I was very interested in getting my nutrients from food. And I'm very interested in whole raw food. And so when this was introduced to me as Chia, I wanted to know about it. Okay, so I really, before I ate it, because it does look like dirt and tastes like nothing, Rachel's perfectly right, I wanted to know why this was called Mila, where did it originally come from and what the background was, and I learned about a guy named Wayne Coates, who actually worked in the University of Arizona with a colleague of mine, Dr. David Yoakum, and whose partner was Andy Weil. And so I actually called him up. And I wanted to know what's going on, and do you know about this? And I talked to Andy, and he told me about the chia seed and what his opinion of fiber. And I kind of learned about how deficient we are as a society. We should have about 25 to 30 grams, and everybody gets maybe about 5, 10, 15 if they're really, really trying. So to be able to add 25 grams of fiber, first of all, you have to tolerate it. And you have to find it, and fiber is always hidden all in carbohydrates, in oatmeal, and it's hidden in muffins, and in toast, and bread, and so you're defeating your purpose. So we know that there are 3 types of fiber. There is the chia seed, there is hemp, which is of a cannabis plant, and there's flax. And the truth about fiber is you have to absorb it. It has to be open. The seeds are very tiny. We throw them in a little blender to divide the seeds up, and they don't open. And the difference between flax and chia is that flax has to be used very quickly, and once you break the seed, it can become rancid, oxidizes, and you can't use it. The shelf life is very short. Well, I was introduced to something that had a very long shelf life. I was very impressed with everything I heard, and I wanted to talk to Dr. Coates. I said, find him, I want to talk to him. And I did. Had a 2-hour conversation about the book that you're talking about, and I was sold. But I used it, I took the whole capsule full, and I had the most efficient evacuation that I've ever had in my life. It was amazing. I was
There you go,
first
Tony.
of all, I said, was that in me? Unbelievable. I didn't believe it. And so I tried it with all my family, and it's like, you too? I had it as a, how long? No, I'll stop there. But it was amazing. And so I felt better. And so my concept of Mila, because I'm very busy and I have to eat and work, and I'm that 12-hour that, you know, I'm a doctor and I'm going to stay a doctor. So I learned that the Aztecs used to take this in little pouches and they would put it in their belts and take it off to battle. And that's all they needed all day long. It's like, no way. Well, research, you can't, because it has every nutrient that you need to sustain yourself. You can actually live on that. And so I started sharing that, and I was like, wow, it's very hydrophilic, holds on the water, and it's soluble and insoluble, so the insoluble is going to go right through, the soluble is going to get in and have what you need, but it had all the nutrients. And actually, I started, well, why is this different? Well, Mila, the miracle seed, is different because of the combination of seeds and the processing, and that's the difference. And you're going to get the maximum nutrition. So if you're going to do something, you want to get the maximum nutrition. So that was my initial. Rachel and I became friends way back in 2008, and we talked about Mila. We still do. So that's my favorite product. So I have patients coming in. The very first thing, and if you look at the magazines, Glamour and Cosmopolitan, what's on the cover of every single magazine?
Supermodel.
But what do you see?
Weight loss.
And what's that word? Flat belly. Get a flat belly all the time. That's what gets your attention. You want to get that flat belly. And how do you get a flat belly? Well, Rachel talked about this big old balloon that's inside, okay? And it starts here and it ends there. And it's long. It's very, very, very long, but it's very important because we do have multiple ways to evacuate, but multiple ways to put in. But actually, there are two entrances that are extremely important, and that's why we're a donut, okay? We're an inside and we're an outside, and we really pay much more attention to our outside than our inside. We want to have flat bellies, and we want to look good. We want to make sure that we have the right cosmetics. We're reading labels, but we go to the grocery store, we're throwing things in and going all the way through, and we never look at labels, and you may say you do, but you'll look, how many carbs, and that's it, you know? You're not adding up what you need. And everybody has a formula, just like a baby, and I tell my patients all the time, oh, let me ask you, raise your hand if you've ever had a kid, if you've ever had a child. Okay. And when you had your child, would you ever think about waking up in the morning and not feeding that baby? I mean, would anybody do that? Or not giving that baby water? No. And what was that thing that you gave the baby in the beginning? What was it called? Formula. Go figure. Isn't that something? We're big babies. We all are. We need formula. And it's the same. And nutrition is nutrition. You need protein, you need good fat, you need good fiber, and you need good carbohydrates. Exactly. And you need water. And that whole concept of build and balance and cleanse, when I was first introduced to Genesis Pure, because I was involved with Mila, and then Mila kind of transitioned for me into Genesis Pure. And so I was on an advisory board because I have to kind of be the know-it-all and in that advisory role, because if I'm going to talk, I want to make sure that my reputation and what I say is shared and is respected. So when I was introduced to Genesis Pure, very quickly I was asked to join some physicians, and at that time there were 3 of us, to have a wellness advisory board because of my background in clinical research, the concept of being in research and development, and that was my first introduction, was like, great. You know what I mean? I can be involved with these products and I can be involved in the research and development. So that means I get to have a conversation once a month or so with now 5 physicians, myself, a general surgeon, an anesthesiologist, a dermatologist, and a pharmacist to talk about these products. We have to study big volumes of information, and I get to learn about all the amazing things that we don't know about still. So way back about 25 years ago or so, I've been married for 31, so it was maybe somewhere 30 years or so ago, got married, and all of a sudden my outside didn't look like it used to, and about 3 or 4 years, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I'm horribly out of shape, gotta do something about it. So, got a personal trainer, and I was gonna change everything, okay, because I'd gone from a very small size, because I've always been very sized, to about 5 sizes. Don't have any pictures like Rachel. I didn't want any, I didn't take any. So I decided I was out of shape and I had to get into shape. So I got a personal trainer, the exact same thing. And I actually realized the reason I was so tired and down was because I was anemic. Didn't even know as a physician. Didn't even know I was anemic. Tingling in my legs, paresthesias, just all the things that go along with the headaches. So I skipped all over that because I didn't know I was anemic, but I started training. And ended up having blood work done one day, and that blood work showed that I was anemic. But I'd gotten into the training so much, I was really, really excited about that. And I felt that my trainer knew more than I did, so guess what? I became a personal trainer. I became ACE certified, took the course so that I could know what she knew and make sure that she was telling me what I should know, and she did. But it gave me the opportunity to share with my patients even more knowledge. And that's the wonderful thing to be able to, because there's so much to know about the body. And going through that school of thought and training for me was something that I didn't get in medical school. We take care of patients and we know nothing about nutrition, nothing about nutrition. So I was able to apply these so that when I talk to a patient, I can say, if I can do it and work 15 hours, plus you can do it. So I don't take no for an answer. People say, oh, I can't exercise, my knee is hurting. As a rheumatologist, I take care of patients who have autoimmune disorders, who have joint problems, who have immunological problems. So they come up to my office and they say, my knee is hurting. I was like, how'd you get up here? Because they were ambulance outside. They came to the door and said, no, I walked. I was like, oh, guess what? You can exercise. So everybody has a formula, okay? So everybody, they can have a formula for eating, that nutritional piece. They have to exercise, and they have to sleep. So how many people in here have cell phones? And what do you do right before you go to bed?
Plug it in.
Plug it in. So that phone really has to sleep and has to be energized. So that's what we do. We don't think about our bodies like that.
Right.
And so that build, balance, and cleanse concept, it's so amazing because that's what we do. And I'm going to finish on this because actually I could go on and on. I've got so much to say because I'm so excited about this. So the body is amazing, and we just have to take, you'll live with your body for 30, 40, 50 years and really not know what it can do. But that donut that I talked about, the mouth, inside that mouth is a very filthy, filthy tongue and back of the throat, and then it goes on down. But everything that goes past this is what you eat. So everything that comes out is what you ate, Right. And so you think about what you eat. You need to think about what it's going to do as it passes through and all the nutrients that need to come in. And we have something now with the actual contents and what lives inside the gut, which is very important, and it's something called the microbiome, the human microbiome, and that's your bacteria that makes you healthy, that allows you to have an immune system, that allows you to live. And if you get rid of that bacteria, guess what? You can't really live. You have to have it. You ever heard of C. diff? Has anyone been sick enough and got, my mom had pneumonia? I'm telling you, people get C. diff, which is a bacteria that comes from too many antibiotics, and you will become so sick and have new diseases because you changed what's inside. And so taking care of that inside, just like you take care of the outside, is so important for health. And so the head, everything is here, and then people say, they think it's in my head, they don't know what's going on. Guess what's in your head? It really is. So inside the head, if you put your finger right in the middle of your forehead, everybody just put your finger here, okay? Right there, it's something called your hypothalamus. And if you think about that triangle of build, balance, and cleanse, and think about the right side of the triangle being the immune system, and the left side of that triangle being energy, okay? Energy, emotions, all of those things that are not of the immune system. They have to be balanced. And if you mess up what's inside that human microbiome, and we know now that if we count the number of cells of the bacteria inside, it's trillions to about 10,000 of our cells. So we are one big bacteria that we live on, and we have to protect that. Probiotics is something that we have here, a product that allows us to maintain that healthy bacteria inside. And so once again, we've got a hypothalamus, and that's the center. That is the what do you call it? That makes the airplanes go. It's the tower that tells us all to go. And so this balances the immune system and helps us to recognize self versus non-self. Okay, because if you're self, you should recognize yourself. If you're non-self, you're a bacteria, bug, or something, and that's how disease starts. If you start getting an abnormal message, and that comes from something in the environment, genetics, which we can't do very much about, things that we eat, not hydrating well enough, all of these things you can control. The other side is what we call that fight or flight, and that's energy, it's emotions. There's something called the limbic system. That's your emotions, your suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's your sleep, and you have to do. Everybody has a circadian rhythm, and everybody has a piece of time that you have to be in that, or you're gonna be off balance, okay? At the bottom, if there are two lines going back and forth, there has to be that balance. And put your finger at the top of the nose, and that's your pituitary. The pituitary takes messages from the hypothalamus. It tells everything else. It tells that adrenal gland to produce natural cortisol, natural prednisone. And so stress isn't, stress isn't twisting the towel and biting on the bullet. Stress is what happens when this is off balance and you get this surge because your body thinks you need natural steroids to calm everything down. Well, steroids, does anybody know anything about steroids? What do you think first you think about steroids? Make you fat, and they blow you up, and they make your bones thin and all those. Well, stress. And so go in. Something that can help balance, and acidity is very, very important. So autoimmune processes, when we attack ourselves, they can't occur if that cell is alkaline. And I didn't buy that for a long time, but acidity is a bad thing. Meat, I haven't eaten meat in 30 years. Because the more you know, the more you can make decisions that are very good for yourself. Everybody's different. Norma here, she stood up when she talked about Genesis Pure, but she was actually involved in a small clinical trial that I did, and she was my first patient that I tried Mila with, and her cardiologist is a colleague of mine. Bah humbug, he just hated everything. Her cholesterol, triglycerides came down so low, she came totally off of medication. She's still off. Based on that. So the more you do things for yourself, you share it. And if I share it with my patients, I share it with my family. And I was just having a conversation with Tara, and she kind of, I don't remember how it started. What are you doing? Because I really feel there's something called Stark Law, and you shouldn't just kind of sell these to your patients. And Aaron said about how if you're not there, what happens. But my job is what I work. And money comes in based on what I do, okay, my physical being. Talked to Tara about Genesis Pure and told her to text me back. Next thing I heard, she had called, she had her package, she did everything. She was on it. She wanted to do it. She had a desire. She listened to what I talked about. She started, and in the first 2 months, she's lost 14 pounds, which is a lot. She has another month to go, the third. And so we're doing a program in our practice with motivation and accountability and measurements where we're measuring. So that is so important, but that motivation comes from knowledge and comes from really trusting your source and engaging. In that cleanse, balance, build, we have to be clean because you can't eat anything and have it absorbed if you got this much stuff on that gut wall on top of the bacteria. Not getting rid of the bacteria, not going and getting a laxative. That's what you do when you have a colonoscopy. You don't want to do that all the time. Something natural, the Cascara Sagrada is a very, very non-caustic type of cleanse, okay? So it's something that's safe. So that's what we do with the Wellness Advisory Board. We look at the effectiveness and the safety. Rally 28 is amazing. I didn't even realize I was involved with this when we were talking about all the products, but this 360 Complete, an amazing product. A protein from potato, okay? Nutrients, 19 nutrients. And the first thing, when I looked at this, it talked about a enzyme called CCK, cholecystokinin. And my eyes bucked because that was my research project when I went to medical school. We got little rats and we fed them. Well, we put a thimble in their stomachs, and then we fed them until they almost burst, and then we unstopped the thimble, and then we stimulated them. Then we cut their heads off, and dipped it in nitrogen, and then we dissected up the brains, and we looked at measurements of the CCK. oh my goodness, it causes satiety, it causes fullness. And I know this works because I researched that, you know? So I looked at that, I was like, oh my gosh, every patient I have has to have this. Natural, not an appetite suppressant that's going to be a pharmaceutical that's going to make you have increased heart rate and possibly make your blood vessels thicken. You know, we take things because we think it's a prescription. This is the best prescription starting non-pharmacologically. And I tell my patients all the time, I will do my best to make you better, but you better bring me a good vessel. And I'll tell you how to do that. And these have become an integral part of what I do and allowing me to have that best vessel that I can put medications in if I need to. So I'm going to stop because I can go.
Wow.